Welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews in partnership with Roadrunner Sports, and today we're taking a look at an update to one of On's more popular neutral daily trainers. It's the Cloudsurfer 2, and yes, you can see directly through this midsole, so let's run with it. Before we get started, I do want to say these shoes were provided to me by Roadrunner Sports, however, no one had a chance to preview this video, and this file synopsis is my own. I'd also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing. Here we go. The On Cloudsurfer 2 is a more traditional daily trainer designed to tackle a wide range of runs. It's basically your standard training option. Now, a lot of people also like this for walking and casual wear just because of the aesthetics and just unique design in general, which most On running shoes seem to have, especially with their see-through midsole. Now, there's a couple things that make this shoe unique, and I'll touch on those later on in the review, but what it boils down to is this is your standard daily trainer. The Cloudsurfer 2 costs $160, which is on the more premium side of things. I thought this probably should be more towards the $140 price point. As far as the stack height goes, we have 37 in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for a 9mm drop. And with those stack height numbers, I would consider this a more moderately cushioned option by today's standards, as most shoes are kind of pushing to the 40 or well above 40mm mark, even for the base model everyday training shoes. And then as far as the weight goes, not too bad, 9.2 ounces. Pretty par for the course for this, not too heavy and not too light, so about what you would expect. The upper on the Cloudsurfer 2 I think is one of the bright spots, at least in my opinion. It does fit true size with regard to length and has a very accommodating fit. I would say this is a high volume upper, a rather wide toe box, and midfoot. For whatever reason, On decides to give their uppers a ton of space, and the Cloudsurfer 2 is no exception, so it feels very much like a an On upper, if you will. Now, the upper material is very breathable, I'd say above average, great deal of airflow. Doesn't look like it, but I was quite happy with how breathable this upper felt on my foot. If we move on to the tongue, it's not gusseted. It is, I guess, partially connected 1/3 down, but for the rest, the sides of the tongue are not attached, and it has a solid amount of padding. It's fairly wide, and I found it to be quite comfortable. Funny enough, the lacing system has what On called out on their marketing material, these kind of unique strings with these overlays, or I'd say stitching, embroidery, whatever you want to call it. It reminds me of Nike Flywire cables, which I think is quite interesting. I'm not sure how much practical purpose it serves in the lockdown, but they do look kind of cool. I thought the lockdown was solid, but I'm not sure how much these kind of flywire cables, for lack of a better term, played a part in that experience. And then if we go toward the ankle and Achilles section, tons of padding back here, very comfortable. You have a fairly flimsy heel counter at the top with a lot more support as you get towards the base of the heel counter. Again, I was quite happy with the lockdown despite it having a fairly large amount of volume to it. Didn't feel like my foot was swimming in it, and I was able to get a solid fit. Do have to pull the laces a bit tight, but because the tongue is so comfortable and padded, didn't really cause an issue for me. So I really like what they do with this upper. Feels like it's a bit wider compared to the first Cloudsurfer, and about on par with what the On does with their uppers nowadays. For whatever reason, they love to give us a ton of room, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, especially if you like to have that extra space for your toes at the front. The midsole is going to be made up of entirely Helion, which is On's super foam, at least according to them. And then the midsole geometry, or I guess setup with the holes, is what they call CloudTech phase. So instead of the more traditional kind of octagon or square CloudTech units, you have these shifted components that collapse in a very strategic way. And yes, you can see directly through this midsole, which I think is kind of a cool look and overall design. Now, we also have a fairly smooth rocker geometry. According to On, they have something called their finite element analysis, which tweaks the geometry and just the setup of the midsole to give you a very smooth feel to it. And I would happen to agree. Now, as far as the softness goes with this midsole, I'd say it's soft for an On shoe, a bit firmer compared to the Cloudsurfer 1, and definitely firmer compared to most other conventional neutral daily trainers. I think On shoes, when you kind of compare them to most other brands, definitely have a firmer feel, but with the Cloudsurfer 2, this is probably one of the softer On shoes available, if that makes sense. And then one other thing I forgot to mention is there is no plastic speedboard or any speedboard of any sort in this midsole, so it's going to be a bit more flexible and bendable. There's no plastic plate, if you will, and I'm very happy to see they have a closed outsole like they had previously. This keeps things from getting inside. Yes, you can have debris get in from the sides of the shoe, but at least you won't have any acorns getting stuck in the heel, which was a problem on earlier versions of On running shoes. Something else I do want to point out when you have these holes through the midsole is the shoe will squeak if it gets wet. I've had that experience, so just be prepared for that. Now, when you're running, it doesn't make too much of a difference, at least for me, because I'm listening to music or I'm talking, so it just doesn't really bother me. But if you're walking or if you're using it at work and the midsole has water there, it will make a squeaking noise. So just be on the lookout for that. So how did the On Cloudsurfer 2 perform? Well, I thought it was fine. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. I thought it got the job done, but at $160, especially in today's running shoe world, I had sky high expectations. So for me, I just wasn't impressed with it. Yes, the foam delivers a decent level of cushioning. I think the real star of the midsole is the rocker geometry. It's very smooth and fluid, just kind of keeps you rolling along. You can tell On put a lot of time and energy in developing this geometry, but I think the foam makes it feel, or it kind of falls a bit short in that area. It has a decent level of cushion, but in the grand scheme of things, it feels like it falls on the firmer side. And again, at $160, there's some pretty bouncy and fun foams out there. And I'll kind of shout out the Salomon Aeroglide 3, which has a bigger midsole, feels lighter, and I think is lighter, with a much bouncier and kind of fun underfoot experience. So I think On's up with some stiff competition, but if you like a firmer and I guess more stable ride, just because with that firmer midsole, you have more inherent stability with a very smooth rocker geometry, I think you might like this. Thought the upper lockdown and everything was good, but I was hoping for a bit more. It's just not the most exciting shoe, especially at that premium $160 price point. I didn't not like it. I've had shoes where I try them and like, it just wasn't enjoyable. I just couldn't get into the flow of things, but I took this on an 11-mile run. I was comfortable. It just didn't overly amaze me. And again, with the shoes coming out now, I think you really have to kind of up your game. So I'd be curious to see what On could do if they changed out the Helion foam and used something they put like maybe in their racing shoes or something with a little bit lighter and bouncier feel. I think they could really up this in that direction. Now, I think for a casual shoe with the firmer midsole, that's actually kind of a slight plus, mainly because it doesn't, wear out your feet and you feel like you have a decent amount of stability and cushion under your foot. But for a running shoe, I was just hoping for a little bit more excitement. So in the long short of it is, I would On, if you're watching this, let's get some interesting foams in this midsole. But I really like the rocker geometry in the upper, I think is spot on. And again, looks aren't too bad either. Well, if that concludes the review, let me know in the comments what you think of the On Cloudsurfer 2. I would love to hear from you. I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.